I want to now talk about the topic of valuation of equity shares. We've already discussed the definition of the word value. I want to reiterate it, that the word value in finance means the present value of future cash flows associated with the asset that you are valuing. Now, the asset that we are talking about is a financial asset, which is an equity share. And what are the future cash flows associated with an equity share? Typically, you have dividend, because we assume that a company will pay dividends, regular dividends across a period of time. So, as an equity shareholder, you will get to earn dividend, and as and when you sell the share off to somebody else, maybe after 5 years, 10 years, you will get some market price. So, two things which come in as cash flows, future cash flows: dividend, which is future dividends, and future market value, market price of the share. Now, I have a small case that I want to read out, and then let us look at how do we practically value an equity share. So, let me read this out. It says that a company is likely to declare a dividend of rupees 15 per share in the next year. Now, how do we get to know this? By looking at the corporate dividend payment history. So, let us say we have 10-15 years of data, and this past data suggests that in future, in the next year, the company is likely to declare a dividend of 15 rupees per share. So, year 1 year from now, this company will pay you a check of 15 per share, right. You are then told that this is likely to grow at the rate of 10% per annum up to the 5th year. So, here is a growth rate mentioned for a finite time period, which is for the next 5 years. Again, where do you get to know the growth rate of a company? By looking at its past growth rate. Now, this is a pretty high growth rate, 10% per annum growth in dividend payment is something which is not sustainable, and hence no corporate can keep on increasing its dividend at the rate of 10% per annum infinitely, right. Perpetually you can't keep on adding 10% to your payout. So, these kind of unsustainable payout, increase in growth rate, increase in dividend or growth rate cannot happen for a very long period of time, but let us just assume that this happens for a 5-year period. So, when I am looking at the future cash flows of this company, if you were a shareholder who is buying the shares of this company, then D1, what does D1 indicate? Dividend at the end of year 1. Dividend at the end of year 1 will be 15, which will now grow at the rate of 10%. So, 15 into 1.10 raised to 1, the next year, that is year 2 end, you will get a dividend of 16.5 rupees, right. Grow this by another 10%, or say 15 into 1.10 raised to 2, your 3rd year's dividend is going to be 18.15, 4th year's dividend is going to be 19.96, and D5, which is dividend at the end of the 5th year, is likely to be 21.96. So, I hope these cash flows are clear: 15, 16.5, 18.15, 19.96 and 21.96. Why am I doing this? Because I again want to go back to the basics. The definition of the word value is calculate the present value of the future cash flows. And what are the future cash flows? For the next 5 years, the next 5 years dividend is what I have jotted down. So, let me read this one more time, that a company is likely to declare a dividend of 15 rupees in the next year, and this is likely to grow at the rate of 10% up to the 5th year. So, the 5-year cash flow is very clear. However, a share, if you do not intend to sell, right, it's almost, it's an asset which can give you money perpetually, right. So, beyond 5 years, what are the details given? You are told thereafter the dividend is likely to grow perpetually at 2% per annum. So, do you notice that the growth rate falls from 10% to 2%, right. So, 10% was an unsustainable growth rate. What is a sustainable growth rate? 2%, which will go on perpetually. So, now we are making very reasonable, assumptions about the future of this company, and saying that we cannot keep on increasing dividend at the rate of 10%, but which will now grow only at the rate of 2%. And what is the time frame? it's a perpetuity, right. So, what kicks in are the concepts of the present value of a perpetuity as far as time value of money is concerned. Now, we know the formula for present value of a perpetuity for a cash flow which is perpetual. The formula is PV is equal to annuity upon R minus G, alright. So, it is annuity upon rate of interest minus the growth rate, which is known as the perpetual growth rate. Now, I want to change this for a valuation context, and I am going to write present value of the 5th year is equal to dividend of the 6th year upon R minus G. Now, why am I writing this and what is the logic? We are not calculating present value at the 0th year right now. We are looking at a perpetuity which will not start from the next year, but a perpetuity which will start from the 6th year, and hence I am calculating the present value only of the 5th year. The perpetuity, which is the annuity, starts from the 6th year onwards, and hence D5 is 21.96 and D6 is what we will calculate upon R minus G, which is pretty clear. My rate of interest, expectation of interest or return is given to me as 18%, right. So, since the asset class is equity, your expectation of return is high. So, unlike a bond where your expectation of return is 6, 7, 8%, the expectation of return for equity happens to be 18%. And what is your perpetual growth rate? It is going to grow at the rate of 2% per annum. So, minus 2%, alright. Dividend of the 6th year will depend upon dividend of the 5th year. So, D5 was 21.96. All of this was growing at a rate of 10%, but it cannot keep on growing at 10%, right, and hence the sustainable growth rate is 2%. So, this 21.96 in future will now grow at the rate of 2%. So, D6 is going to be 21.96 into 1.02. So, this D5 5th year's dividend will now start growing at the rate of 2%, right. So, that is a simple calculation, 21.96 into 1.02, that is 22.39 divided by 18 minus 12 is 16%, divide by 16% gives me a value of 139.99. I can round it off to 140, right. What does 140 indicate? It indicates the value of the 5th year, right. So, what is the likely value of the share 5 years from now? Whatever it will earn in future. What is the future for the 5th year? 6th year till infinity. So, what does this 140 capture? Importantly, conceptually, 140 captures the perpetual cash flow that this company will keep on giving you at by increasing the dividend at 2%, starting from the 6th year going on till perpetuity. So, the present value in the 5th year of this share is how much? 140. So, P5, I am going to write 140 along with this 21.96, right. So, P5 is written along with D5. Why am I doing that? Because both of these indicates the value at the end of the 5th year from today, right. Now, if I were to sum this up, I am saying year 1, what are my future cash flows? 15, year 2, 16.5, year 3, 18.15, year 4, 19.96, year 5, I will get a dividend of 21.96 from the company. I will not get 140 from the company, but 140 represents everything that I will get from this company from the 6th year up to the perpetuity, that is infinitely whatever I get from this company, all of that is captured in this one amount, which is 140 rupees, right. Now, all that I have to do is convert the future cash flows into present value. So, multiply, these are all future values, all right, multiply all of these future values by the present value interest factor, that is 1 upon 1.18 raised to 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. I have written all of this for you. It is for you to look at. It is a pretty simple calculation, PVIF. Multiply 15 with the PVIF of the first year, 16.5 with the PVIF of the second year, so on and so forth, and you will get the present value. Now, what I have done is I have multiplied 21.96 with the PVIF of the 5th year and got 9.59. I need to multiply 140 also. So, 140 multiplied by the PVIF of the 5th year. Why am I doing this? Let us get this clear. This is value of money at the end of the 5th year. I want to convert it into value of money today, and hence I multiply it with the PVIF, the present value factor of the 5th year, to convert it into year 0. 140 into 0.437 gives me 61.18, all right. So, all of these when I total up, I get a value which is value of the share in year 0, all right. That is a quick addition, 12.7 plus 11.84 plus 11.05 plus 10.27 plus 9.59 and lastly plus 61.18 gives me a value of 116.63. I can call this as P0 or value of share at the end of year 0 or today. So, this share, if I were to buy in the market today at a value of 116.63, and if it was to give me all of these cash flows in future, I will end up earning a return of 18%. That is one way to interpret this calculation. The other way is that if I want to earn 18% out of this financial product which promises this cash flow to me, if I want to earn 18%, I cannot afford to pay anything more than 116. If I were to pay 150 rupees for this share today, my rate of return will drop and go below 18. But if I get this share in the market on the stock terminal, exchange terminal at a value of, let us say, 75 rupees, then you have hit a jackpot. Why? Because your return will be more than 18% in that case, right. Now, to sum it up, everything that we have done is simply, getting all your concepts of time value of money together, which is converting future cash flows into present value. But now let me give this entire technique its technical name. This as a model is known as a two-stage dividend discount model. Let me write that: dividend discount model, all right. Why do we call it this? A dividend discount model means discounting dividend. So, all future dividends have been discounted, which is converted into a present value. Why do I call it a two-stage dividend discount model? Because we have looked at two time frames, 1 to 5 and then 6 to infinity. There were two growth rates given to you, 10% growth rate during the finite time and a 2% growth rate during the infinite time, which is 6 till infinity, and hence it is known as a two-stage dividend discount model. There are different models available, a one-stage model, a three-stage model and so on, but a two-stage model is usually the most popular dividend discount model or way or a framework or a model to value an equity share. I hope this makes one of the methods of valuing an equity share clear. One method that we have discussed today is known as the dividend discount model. Thank you.